not adjacent to those communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sam Resnick. I'm a member of Cascadia Cop Watch and a homeless resident of the city of Portland. I'd just like to give a little bit of background on the body-worn camera program and the gang enforcement and how the two issues are related. I'm sure all of you are familiar, or at least heard the name, Captain Mark Kruger. And he, until I believe last year, was the head of the gang enforcement, now gun enforcement task force. And for those of you who don't know, Captain Mark Kruger is an admitted Nazi SS enthusiast and memorializer of dead German World War II soldiers. So in the past year, he's transitioned in career from being in charge of gang enforcement to being in charge of forensic standards. Now, I assume that the part of the Portland Police Bureau that would be in charge of overseeing a body-worn camera program would be the Forensic Standards Division. So basically what we're seeing is a person who has a history of extremely racist and repulsive behavior moving from one department of the Portland Police Department, where he has essentially a list of every person of color in the city for his officers to give increased scrutiny, to being in charge of the body-worn camera program, where he, I assume, as the head of that division, will be responsible for overseeing who gets to see what footage. So how can we really make any forward-moving progress when that's the status of the Portland Police Bureau?
Higher than Nazi.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Good evening. My name is James Posey. I'm a member of this community, and I just wanted to address a couple things. And I got invited to this meeting by Sharon Berry Smith, and I understand this is her last meeting part of this committee, and that stresses me because we have so few people who are willing to step up and do things in this community that really are relevant, really understand the problem. And it bothers me that we're not compensating people like Sharon to be on these committees. You know, I mean, she's a good-hearted person. But at the end of the day, people who have real skills need to be compensated. I'm not saying everybody, everybody got to have a lot of money, but you know, you get what you pay for. And if Sharon is not a part of this committee, it's going to be less, and I think all of you all know that. So you might want to look at how people get involved on this committee in whatever way you want to look at it. I don't know how this is structured. This is only the second meeting I've been to, so I want to make that point. If you want somebody good, you need to pay for them, or at least compensate them in a way in which they can be incentivized to be really participating on this project. The other thing is, I listened to the body cameras discussion, and to me it's a no-brainer. You already have a trust problem with the police, so why would you even entertain the idea of the police having any control over body cameras at all? That's a no-brainer. The issue of the police having any control over body cameras should never even be presented in the context of what we're trying to do here, because we do not trust the police. And the way the police can get trusted is be willing to forego control over the body cameras, even if you do body cameras. But I think some people would just like for the police to stop shooting people that look like me. The third item is, it concerns me that when I look around and the several meetings that I've been with, I've heard the gentleman, Bob Dye, talk about our youth and the Lloyd Center. Why aren't these young people who are represented in these meetings? When you talk about community engagement, Mr. Drury, you work with these young people. You see them every day. You work with people who work with these kids every day. They're the ones that are being shot. I can't understand why you wouldn't emphatically overcompensate with the people who are impacted by this problem be involved in this committee. Similar to the mothers who have lost their kids on the street by the police. Their context or contributing to this whole discussion needs to be weighed against what they've lost, what they've contributed to this whole context of working with the police. I don't see that. Until you guys are able to put all that in perspective, I really don't think you're just sitting up here talking to one another, making motions, but you need to validate what you're trying to do based upon the constituency who are impacted by the problem.
Thank you. Just to respond a little bit to that, this committee is just one of four of our, five. We have 4 subcommittees that do a lot of this work, including 2 youth members who sit on here. We have a youth subcommittee that will be and is continuing to reach out and engage these different committees. We have a race subcommittee as well. And we're not unmindful of the fact that this room does continue to need representation, and that's something that we're going to continue to work on.
Yeah, let me just say real quickly, I've been around for about 30, 40 years, and you're a young guy telling me we're going to work on this. So you can got a lot of time in front of you, but my time is short.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking to see something happen like next week.
Thank you. We would invite you to come to one of those subcommittees and help us with that, because I think those ideas are great.
Yeah, let me just tell you. Listen, I'm looking for outcomes. Committees, I've been to a ton of meetings. We got to have something fall out on the ground that we can pick up and carry.
Oh yeah.
Y'all keep going to all these damn committees and everything. I'm tired of that stuff.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
listen, do the things you know you should do with common decent sense. Okay? Do that first.
We can thank you.
Yeah.
Right on. Ted appointed these people. It's not their fault. Ted appointed them. Remember that.
Fair enough.
Go ahead, man.
Was it the signer?
I'm the signer here to represent the,
Yeah.
I'm here on behalf of Talk Up the Town, LLC, and Leafly Holdings Incorporated, which represents,
Yeah, just looking up to make sure it's on.
cannabis community, which
I don't have my glasses.
I know my
I want
pants.
to talk to
actually
them.
be the reason for a lot of the funding that you guys have right now. When you guys proposed the tax, you told the city and you told the voters that the tax money would go to public safety, which is fine. But you also told them that that money would go to minority and women business holders who wanted to get into the industry. And that's been fine, but at the same time, the minority and the women business holders are now the ones that are getting out of the industry because we're going back into the white males that are holding all of the holdings in the industry. Furthermore, our delivery services, our African American and our people of color that are doing delivery services for our legal dispensaries, which are running delivery services, which means that they're not dope boys, they're not the weed man, they're not on the black market, are constantly getting pulled over by your officers. Which means that our medical patients are going without their medication. So I don't think you guys realize the implications of that. Which also means that a lot of the money for these body cams that you're talking about came from me and my colleagues. And nobody has came to ask us what we thought about anything that you're doing with our money. No? Okay.
So my name is David Keith Davis with Multnomah County Cop Watch. And
David, a little bit closer to the microphone.
so my name is David Keith Davis, Multnomah County Cop Watch. I realize that this whole board was put together and handpicked by Ted Wheeler, and it's kind of hard to actually have any faith in anything that Ted Wheeler does, especially. And you know, I do think a couple of you on this board actually do have the intentions for police accountability and actually think you're going to make a difference, but in the end this is not going to make any difference because this is basically like a puppy dog with no teeth, which has less teeth than the previous board, which wasn't handpicked by Ted Wheeler, that actually did have community input more, COAB. And the first thing that Ted Wheeler did was go in and dissolve COAB, which actually had lawyers that worked on the James Chassis case and a lot of other professional people and others. And I know Sam Sachs has been a correctional guard before. He's worked with Matt Hennessy, former police employee who works with the gang task force, who's also admitted pedophile who admitted to raping his own relative for 5 years or so. And you know, this is a person who frequently hangs out with the mayor, the governor, attorney general. Then you have Terry Bean, who's currently on trial for having sex with a 15-year-old, who's personally funded Joanne Hardesty, Ted Wheeler, Nick Fish, Dan Saltzman, Steve Novick, the Attorney General, Ellen Rosenblum, Kate Brown, Barbara Roberts, Al Gore, the Clintons, Barney Frank is Nick Fish's old boss who was implicated in the child abduction and rape of Johnny Gosh. And that's not a conspiracy theory, that's actually in a book by a respected senator, Senator John DeCamp, The Franklin Cover-Up. And Nick Fish also, his relative, Peter Stuyvesant, was a Dutch colonialist that worked for the East India Corporation, that hated all Jews, Catholics, Quakers. He tortured Quakers. And so, you know, and then you got Ted Wheeler, a little Harvard oligarch that comes in running on a Democratic ticket when he's actually just a Republican. And he just came in, thought, and all the dumb voters of Portland bought it. During the Trump election cycle, all the progressives of Portland were so stupid that they elected Ted Wheeler, and they didn't even look into any of his stuff.
Coming up on 3 minutes, if you have any thoughts or recommendations.
And now I'm currently facing criminal trial by Ted Wheeler, and by him and G4S. I was attacked at City Hall for filming a public meeting, city council meeting. Joanne Hardesty was there too. She had nothing to say, but she did endorse G4S last week. $10 million contract for 5 years. Those guys are involved in Israeli detention centers, ICE facilities.
3 minutes, you need to wrap up the comments.
So how is how can Joanne Hardesty, Ted Wheeler, all these different people on city council justify hiring a mercenary group that is like the equivalent of Blackwater, and then acting like they can handpick some board that's actually going to ever do anything? This is all just a pathetic whitewash of reality.
And they cut the parks.
This is total blue supremacist bullshit, you know. And that really is the true nature of this. This is just a gatekeeping operation to
You're at 4 minutes now.
steer the
We're
social
gonna move on
engineering
to the next
programs, and you know, and really,
We're
yeah,
at 4 minutes.
having the parks funded and stuff would actually help the youth, not all these bullshit gang program initiatives that are tied into the cops.
Thank you for your
directly
comments.
target them. And the drug war, give me a break. The
So,
CIA
any more
brings in
public
all the
comments
drugs.
related to the
This is
4
all-
recommendations that we have?
America is a fucking nightmare.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to PSEP. If there's any more thoughts on these recommendations, I know we heard a lot of good public comment, and we are right at time, so we should, if there's any final public comments or PSEP comments on it, we will then read through our list of PSEP members and vote individually on these 4 recommendations. Any final thoughts, PSEP?
I just wanted to make comment about advocates being called gang dropouts. I have done advocacy work, and I know lots of people who do, and they shouldn't be categorized that way. I think there are a lot of good people who do a lot of good work in these spaces, and I don't think we should be condescending to how and why and from whence they came.
They're gang dropouts. That's a requirement.
I think some dismissive comments thrown at toward this committee. Okay?
Oh my God, are your feelings hurt?
Everyone here,
Just feel like Charles Johnson isn't here.
everybody here has devoted a tremendous number of hours, before we ever had our first meeting.
You have a glass of water
In
in your hand
training,
already.
in learning.
Imagine if your
Everyone
family member
here
was
is
killed.
Unpaid. Everyone here is participating because they want to make